Hey guys, it's Brianna. I would like to talk about interlocking today. I know a lot of you out there, locticians, love to do interlocking, but in my experience, and I have over 10 years experience doing dreadlocks on resistant hair types, that means hair types that don't lock up simply by twisting. When interlocking is done on that hair type, we have problems, and I'd like to go over that in this video. I also want to talk about a favorite client of mine who went on a work trip and came back 6 months later. I have been working on his hair for 5 years. I didn't start the dreads, but I've been maintaining them for 5 years nonstop. My method, no other method. And then, of course, while he was gone, he needed to get some maintenance done. He didn't call me and ask me if I felt like the method that she was going to use was going to work. And I guess he didn't really know the right questions to ask when he was asking the loctician if she could do his dreads in the same manner that I did them. So, word to the wise, educate yourselves, and we're about to do that. And stay tuned to the end so that you can find out what happened.
Just want to show you guys what happens when you interlock Caucasian or smooth hair. This is 2 months after it was done to his hair. You could see that knot. It chokes out the dreadlock and doesn't allow it to move properly and breathe. And so then what happens is it creates breakage either right away from the scalp like his or even 10 years down the road. All right, let me explain this to you. When you have a dreadlock on smooth hair, the hair coming out of the scalp, this is the scalp, is going to be straight because it is not only being pulled by the scalp tautly, it's also being pulled by the dread, right? This thing is all tied up in knots and it's tight. It's gonna pull this hair straight both ways. Now, when you go in there and you tie a knot in here, which is interlocking, when they split the hair down the middle and then they bring the dread through that and out the other way, split it again and bring it back through. What it does is it chokes out your dreadlock. It creates a tightening effect, right? Kind of like a little braid. Very tight. Goes all the way up to the head. Really, really tight. So what you have is already tight hair. Maybe it looks loose to the average person and has, wild hairs hanging out of it. People don't like that. So they do this, and then all of a sudden you're putting much more tension on the scalp and you're putting tension on the dread below it, both of which are immovable. Now, either within days or months of that happening, you could have a situation where then the hair above this knot starts forming really, really tight dreadlock, okay? And that shrinks up this area and it pulls the hair straight out of the scalp. So then you end up with a little breakage and very thin hair at the root left over in order to hold up this dread. That, my friends, is hair that's been pulled directly out of the root. And now that you have cut off circulation to this new growth right here, it is no longer training this new growth how to lock up, which is what happened over the course of the history if the dread was done properly. If somehow that dreadlock manages to survive the interlocking, then years on down the road, you're gonna have your dreadlock, you're gonna have your little knot that was put in there, and the bottom of the dreadlock, right? This knot is smoothed out hair like a braid. It's very, very smooth. It's not locked up. It's not a basket weave of tangles like it should be. And it is no longer able to shrink from below. So all of a sudden, you're gonna end up with thin spot as well, right here, because it's gonna have tried to shrink together. Dreads want to constantly be becoming denser and denser and as tight as possible. And so it's pulling the hair from different directions. So when there's a knot tied in it and it pulls the hair, it runs out of hair to pull. So you get a thin spot right here. And then right above it, where we had that original problem, where it's really, really tight and then goes to thin again, and then maybe someday it recovered, you know, now you have a weak spot here as well. This hair is going to all become very brittle and inconsistent, and someday down the road, it will break off in one of these two places. So I just want to show you guys what I did when he showed up. These are two of his dreads right at the beginning of his maintenance visit. I had to take the loose hairs that were around the lock and pull them into that area where it was really thin hair at the root. I had to loosen up the knots that were created and try and pull that hair up into that loose hair as well, so that I could create a basket weave at the root, if that makes any sense. But basically what I'm trying to do is encourage the hair to retrain itself to lock up. And then I banded everything and hoped for the best. Well, everyone, I wish that I had some happy news to report, but unfortunately I don't. After 6 months of working on these locks, doing my absolute best, hardest work ever, they fell off one by one at that loose spot. Thankfully, he had 6 months of regrowth and root maintenance, so when they fell off, he had a whole new set of dreads to start with that were already locked up and ready to go. So that's the positive side of this, but the sadness is that after 5 years of, the same type of maintenance method, it can only take a matter of hours to mess it all up. And that is heartbreaking as his loctician. So what we learned today is make sure to ask plenty of questions from a loctician. Find out what their methods are and make sure that it's right for you. If you're going to get locks created, you could even ask them to create one on your head. And if it doesn't lock up a little bit within a month and look like a dreadlock, then you know something's wrong with their method. It really doesn't take. I have locked the straightest hair by doing what I do, gently, organically, naturally, easily, soft force method. They walk away from me in a month, they come back, and I see this little dreadlock formed and held into position. It doesn't need all that stuff. It doesn't need gel, it doesn't need wax. Ask questions, find out what their method is. Number two, if you're a loctician, there are different methods for different hair types. You don't do the same thing. You should know this. If you don't know new methods, then get educated on new methods. There's so many locticians out there, you don't have to do every client. I don't do every type of client. I do the clients that I'm good at that require my services, because there's plenty of other locticians out there who can handle the other people with their own methods. I teach classes. If you'd like to learn how to do my method, please let me know. I'm in Virginia, I'll teach you. Yeah, I guess those are my 2 lessons for the day. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for watching, I appreciate it.